Arman grew up in a neighborhood where life was noisy, chaotic, and competitive, yet success was quiet and often invisible. The streets were full of people chasing instant recognition, fast cars, flashy jobs, social media applause, but Arman's family believed in hard work that no one noticed. His father labored in a factory from dawn till dusk, returning home exhausted yet determined to provide. His mother juggled multiple jobs, always tired but always present for her children, teaching them that life demanded perseverance before reward. From a very young age, Arman learned that achievement wasn't about being seen. It was about effort, discipline, and persistence. At school, he wasn't the loudest student or the most popular, but he had a hunger to learn that went far beyond the classroom. While other children played or scrolled through social media, he spent hours after class with a second-hand computer and old books, learning to code and design. The machine was slow, the programs often crashed, but he never stopped. Each crash became a lesson, each error a challenge to overcome. Despite his determination, the world around him seemed indifferent. Teachers overlooked his projects, classmates mocked his outdated computer, and local opportunities were reserved for those who spoke louder, presented flashier resumes, or had connections he didn't. Rejection letters and dismissals piled up, and for a moment, Arman questioned himself. Maybe they were right. Maybe he didn't belong in a world that celebrated spectacle over substance. But in the quiet of his small room, something extraordinary happened. Arman began to find joy in effort itself. He discovered satisfaction in learning a new programming language, solving a problem no one else had attempted, and finishing a project, even if no one applauded. The late nights, the solitude, and the invisible victories became his secret power. Each day, he was quietly shaping his character, molding resilience, and teaching himself patience, the kind of patience that only comes from working without immediate reward. The first stage of his journey was full of doubt, fear, and struggle, yet it was also the stage where his identity was being built. He realized that true strength doesn't come from recognition. It comes from consistency, from showing up when no one is watching, and from refusing to give in to discouragement. The silence wasn't empty. It was fertile ground where determination and skill could grow unchallenged. Arman's life in this phase wasn't glamorous. He often walked past neighborhoods of glittering success and wondered if he would ever be noticed. Yet, every small achievement mattered, even if unseen. The first website he built from scratch, the small program that worked flawlessly after weeks of trial and error, the knowledge that he was growing faster than he had ever imagined. Slowly, he began to understand a crucial truth. The quiet and seen effort of today was laying the foundation for the victories of tomorrow. By the time he reached the end of his teenage years, Arman was no longer just a boy with an old computer and a dream. He had become a young man shaped by struggle, molded by silence, and driven by a vision that few could understand. The world had not yet recognized his potential, but that no longer mattered. He had discovered that being built in silence wasn't about being unnoticed, it was about creating a foundation so strong that one day, when the world finally looked, his impact would be undeniable. The quiet room, the late nights, the invisible victories, all of it had meaning. In the shadows, Arman had begun to grow, to build skills, resilience, and self-belief that would carry him through challenges far greater than anything he had faced so far. He understood now that the world remembered those who persisted quietly, those who honed their craft in solitude, and those who refused to quit even when no one was watching. And so, with every keystroke and every page read, Arman continued to build himself in silence, ready for the day when the world could no longer ignore him. By the time Arman entered his early 20s, the world outside still seemed indifferent to his efforts, yet inside him, something had begun to shift. The boy who once questioned his worth had started to see himself differently, not through the eyes of others, but through the results of his own persistence. Every project completed, every line of code perfected, and every obstacle overcome became a testament to his growing capabilities. He had learned that recognition was temporary, but skill and character were permanent. The early days were still full of struggle. Arman took on freelance work, often for clients who paid little or nothing, simply because he wanted the experience, the learning, and the chance to prove to himself that he could deliver. He faced criticism that stung sharply. One client accused him of being inexperienced. Another dismissed his work as amateur. Each rejection brought a wave of doubt. But instead of surrendering, he transformed these moments into fuel. He asked himself difficult questions. What can I learn from this? How can I grow stronger? Each challenge became a stepping stone, and slowly, the boy who worked in silence became a young man who thrived in it. Arman's daily routine became a ritual of self-discipline. Mornings were for learning new technologies, afternoons for building real-world projects, and evenings for reflection and journaling. He measured his progress not by praise, but by mastery, the ability to solve a problem that had seemed impossible the day before. He began to internalize a principle that would define this stage of his life. Success isn't something the world gives you. It is something you earn quietly, consistently, and relentlessly. Isolation, once a source of loneliness, now became a sanctuary. In the silence, he could focus without distraction, experiment without judgment, and fail without shame. Arman discovered that the greatest battles weren't external, they were internal. Every time he doubted himself, procrastinated, or felt the temptation to quit, he faced a choice: succumb or persevere. Choosing perseverance again and again, even in small ways, forged an inner strength that no rejection could erase. Gradually, his quiet work began to bear fruit. A small project caught the attention of a local startup, leading to a referral that introduced him to new clients. A blog post about his freelance journey began to gain traction online. These moments were modest, almost imperceptible, but for Arman, they were proof that silent effort, compounded over time, could move mountains. He realized that building in silence didn't mean working without impact. It meant focusing on what mattered most, away from noise and distraction, until the results became undeniable. The most important transformation, however, was internal. Arman's self-worth was no longer tied to approval or recognition. He measured success by his growth, his persistence, and his ability to overcome challenges. Every failure became a lesson, every late night a training ground, and every small achievement a reminder that his path was unique. While others sought immediate reward or validation, Arman learned the power of patience and consistency, virtues that would define not just his career, but his life. By the end of this stage, Arman had changed fundamentally. He was no longer the uncertain young man who worried about being unnoticed. He was a skilled, disciplined, and confident individual who understood that the world's applause was temporary, but the strength built in silence would endure forever. The foundation laid in his teenage years had grown into a quiet mastery that no rejection could shake. The stage was set for something greater, a life where his work, dedication, and resilience would finally speak louder than words, leaving a mark long remembered. Years had passed since Arman first began his journey in silence. The late nights, the invisible victories, and the countless rejections had forged him into someone unrecognizable from the uncertain boy he once was. Now, in his late 20s, he led a small tech startup, a company built not on shortcuts or flashy marketing, but on dedication, skill, and relentless persistence. Every line of code his team produced, every product they launched, carried the imprint of the lessons Arman had learned in solitude: patience, resilience, and mastery through quiet effort. Despite external success, Arman never lost sight of what truly mattered. He remembered the long years when no one noticed him, the times he questioned his worth, and the nights he spent working alone while others celebrated temporary victories. That period of struggle had shaped him, teaching him that true accomplishment is measured not by applause, but by growth and impact. He carried this understanding into his leadership, mentoring his team not for recognition, but to instill the same principles of dedication and focus that had guided him through the darkest hours. Arman often walked through the office, observing his team with quiet satisfaction. Young developers were eager, ambitious, and sometimes impatient, chasing trends and external validation. Arman shared with them a simple truth: mastery and legacy are built in silence. Don't chase applause, he would tell them. Focus on your craft. Build something meaningful. The world will remember the work, not the noise you make while building it. His words weren't motivational cliches. They were the distillation of years of unseen struggle, failures, and relentless effort. Recognition began to follow, not because he sought it, but because his work was undeniable. Industry leaders reached out for collaborations, media outlets covered his projects, and invitations to speak at conferences arrived. Yet Arman remained grounded. He understood that recognition is fleeting, but the value of quiet perseverance lasts. Every achievement was a reminder of the power of silent dedication, proof that the small unseen steps he had taken over the years were building something permanent and meaningful. He also reflected on the influence of his personal growth. Arman's early struggles had taught him empathy, humility, and patience. He reached out to communities, supported aspiring developers, and provided mentorship to those who, like him, were working quietly in obscurity. He realized that being built in silence was not only about personal success, it was about leaving a legacy that others could learn from, a life demonstrating that resilience and mastery matter more than fleeting attention or applause. In quieter moments, Arman thought about the boy who had sat in a small room, coding on a battered computer, dreaming of a life he couldn't yet see. He felt gratitude for every struggle, every rejection, and every invisible victory. They had been the scaffolding of his growth, shaping a man who could now create lasting impact. He understood that the world may forget the loud and boastful, but it remembers those whose work is grounded in perseverance, integrity, and skill, the ones built in silence. When he finally stood on a stage to accept an industry award, he didn't see it as the pinnacle of success. Instead, he viewed it as a quiet acknowledgement that the journey of discipline, focus, and dedication had reached others. The applause, though powerful, was secondary to the knowledge that his life and work had the potential to inspire generations. Arman had learned that legacy is not made in moments of spectacle, but in years of quiet, consistent effort that eventually speak for themselves. His journey proved a timeless truth. The world may overlook effort, but it cannot ignore mastery. Those who are built in silence, who endure struggle without complaint, who dedicate themselves to craft and character, are the ones who are remembered forever. Arman had become living proof that quiet persistence, humility, and dedication create a legacy far more enduring than fame or recognition ever could. The boy who once worked alone was now a man whose impact would echo, silently but forever, inspiring those who dared to build in silence.